Hello there, my stamping friends. Susan here with Pumpkin Hill Stampers, and I have a Stampin' Show and Tell to share with you today. I thought I would do some watercolor washing in the background for a technique, and then I wanted to use my Timeless Tropical stamp set, so I'm going to combine the two, my stamps, with the watercolor wash technique, and I'm going to do some heat embossing too. So let's go ahead and get started, and I will walk you through the process of my crafting. Okay, so I'm starting with shimmery white cardstock. It's thick. It's a thicker cardstock and it holds up really well to watercolor washing. So first thing I'm going to do is stamp. Now, one of my favorite designs, and I'm sure you've noticed it on some of my other cards, is I like to stamp trees from the viewpoint of like looking up, like if you were laying on the ground or laying on the beach, looking up through the treetops. So I stamp my tree image around the edges, leaving the middle open. So I am stamping the palm trees around the edges with my Versamark ink, and then I'm going to dust it and heat emboss it. Let's see, bring one here and do 5. I often do odd numbers keep everything kind of off balance just a little. So I've kind of stamped 5 of the images around the edges. I'm going to emboss them in black today. So I'm going to pick it up where I haven't stamped so I don't smudge it. And I'm just going to dust across the image that I stamped with that black emboss powder. Knock off the excess. Give it a second dusting. Make sure you get all the detail covered. Looks like I've got a little in the middle, but I think it'll be okay. Okay, so alright, so I've got my trees dusted. So now I'm going to bring in a piece of scrap just so I can heat emboss there. While I'm at it, I'm going to stamp my sentiment from the stamp set as well. And so I'm going to heat emboss this too. So we'll just do them both at the same time. So I've already cut from my Stitch So Sweetly dies a tag here. So I'm just going to stamp that in the middle, and then I'm going to dust that real quick too. And then we'll go on to our watercolor wash. Alright, so stay tuned while I heat emboss, and I'll be right back to continue. Moving on to the trees. So I kind of start in one corner and I work my way around the image so I don't lose track of what I've heated and what I haven't. You see I'm kind of tipping it as I go. I kind of use my lights to help me see that it's changing and that I'm not leaving any of the powder unheated. one of the reasons I heat emboss often when I watercolor wash is because that way the ink that you stamp your image with isn't going to fade or get mixed up with the watercolor wash technique. Okay, because you're using water-soluble ink and then you're using maybe water-soluble ink again, and the two are going to try to meet up and kind of smear. So this way my image is set in its embossing powder, so it's not going to change. So now I'm just going to use my aqua painter, all right, my watercoloring brush, get some water in the tip of that, and I've just opened up my Coastal Cabana ink pad, and you can see I've been using it on a few projects. So I'm just going to add some re-inker to my lid. I'm going to drop a little water in there, just kind of thin it out a little bit. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my watering brush here, and I'm going to paint over my embossed image. Okay, and I'm just going back and forth. You can go light, you can go dark, you can go all the way to the edges, you can stay inside the edges. It's really not necessary to be super specific. You certainly can watercolor very carefully and apply color just where you want it, but I'm really going for just a wash of color, right? I'm looking at my image is to be looking up into the sky on a nice clear day, so I just want my white background, right, my shimmer white background to be colored, but I don't necessarily want it as solid as cardstock, right, colored cardstock. So there I go. Now one thing when you watercolor wash is you're going to want your paper to dry before you adhere it to your card, and when you adhere it to your card you're going to want to make sure you cover it fairly well with adhesive so that it really sticks to the cardstock below. Alright, let me set that aside. So now I'm going to, while this is drying a bit, I'm going to go ahead and make the embellishment that I thought about for the center. So I already stamped and I embossed my tag, right? So from that same set of coordinating dies, I've got the top of the pineapple, and I did it in black because I kind of thought it would be a fun texture to use in the tag. And then I also have, with Bermuda Bay, which I like coordinating with the Coastal Cabana, I did these 3 little leaves out of those, and they die cut and they also kind of emboss, so it's like a twofer. Okay, so I think I'm going to build this like this, but I'm going to cut this in half. I want to make it a little bit bigger, and I can hide the opening behind my tag. So we're just going to spread this out a little, expand it. Okay, just expand it a little. Maybe I want it a little off center. Yeah, we'll go like that. Alright, so now I need to have some adhesive. So I'm just going to put some adhesive on the back of my tag. And I'm going to set this one down like that, and then I'm going to come in here and pick up the other end. Alright? Okay, so there's my other end. So that's good, just like that. And then I've got all these little leaves, right? So I'm going to use glue dots. So these glue dots, these actually came in the paper pumpkin kit. So I have these handy. And I'm just going to put a glue dot on a few of the leaves and then build out my sentiment tag. Now you might be saying, why are you putting the glue dots on the top of those? Don't you want them on the bottom? Well, what I'm actually going to do is tuck them between the tag and the other embellishment that I put on already. I'm just going to peel off those tops, and I'm putting them kind of around, not really being super specific about what goes where. I'm just kind of keeping it balanced a little. They can overlap just a little. I often, like I said, I do things in odd numbers, so I'm not going to use that one. I'm just going to use this other little one. And I think I'm actually going to put this one on top. So this glue dot I'm putting on the back of my die. Peel that off. I'm just going to kind of roll it up on itself so it's not sticking through those holes. And let's see, up or down? I think I'll go down. Okay, so there's my sentiment for the center. So let's go ahead and put the card together. Alright, so you can see my paper is kind of curling up, so I'm just going to work it with my fingers, kind of uncurl it. If you can, just go ahead and let it really dry. Press it under a book or some heavy stamp sets for a while. Just let it really dry, but it'll be okay. Alright, so then I'm going to use my liquid adhesive on the back. And like I said, I really want to coat it fairly well. So it doesn't have to be heavy, but you want to get it close to the edges and do the whole surface. Sometimes you can use a sponge to kind of spread it out a little bit. Okay. So I put a lot on there, but I didn't put it on too heavy. And so I'm just going to frame this on the basic black. Just want it to kind of pop up on a frame on the card. I'm going to flip that over, give it a good press, get that adhesive layer to really adhere between the two panels. Okay, and then that's going to go on my card, just like that. See, I'm a little crooked. Bet you I have it down too stiff now though. If I had been looking at it, I could have pulled this down a little bit. Nope, it's done. Alright, we're just going to leave it. Handmade crafts are not always perfect, and that's okay. I know some of you are saying, you have to peel that up. Nope, you don't have to peel it up. Let it be part of the project. It's okay. Alright, so I've got that one down, and then I've got my sentiment here that I'm going to put. See, now I could do all kinds of things. I could put it down low, right, and have more of that showing. I could turn it this way. Lots of positions. How do I want it? Let's see. I think I kind of like it. I think I kind of like it like that. That's what I'm going to do. So, remember, it's your card. You can put it together the way you want to, but this is the way I'm going to put it together today. So, it's all for fun, right? Put a little more on the back of this, right there. Just want to make sure it's evenly positioned. Okay. Oh, and my bottom came off. Press that on there. Okay. So, I'm going to put this here. Nope, I said here. Did I say here? Oh my goodness, I can't remember what I said. I think I said there. I'm going to put it there. Okay. So, embossing with watercolor wash. Okay, the watercolor wash was really kind of simple, right? We just painted the scene after we had embossed it. So that was pretty quick. Alright, I have another project with the same set, same technique I want to show. So this time I'm going to emboss in white, but I'm still going to do a watercolor wash. But I'm going to do a little bit different. We're going to segment the background. So you can see I've done some work ahead of time on that one. But let's start with our panel. So again, I'm starting with shimmery white, and I'm going to stamp with Versamark and then heat emboss. This time I'm going to use the fun leaf, right? And if you didn't know it came from the Tropical stamp set, you might say, what set does that go with? So this time I'm going to stamp a cascade of these coming down the side of my card. Okay, so I'm being deliberate. I'm kind of only stamping on half of the panel, maybe less than half of the panel. Okay, I'm stamping with active edges. I don't mind having active edges. I actually kind of want the active edge. But I want to keep it all on one side of the panel. And this one, like I said, I'm going to dust this one with white. And then I'll heat emboss that in a minute. Get that really well dusted. Flip that off a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside for a second. And then this one, I'm going to use a stamp from the Create with Friends board set. This one just says amazing. So I just wanted a single sentiment tag. So here I'm just stamping that down on my pre-cut from my Tasteful Labels dies. They fit really nicely in those. And I'm just going to emboss this as well. Alright, so one more time, we're going to do some heat embossing. Bear with me, just got to get this done. Alright, here we go. Even just white on white is pretty stunning, guys. So, there we go. Alright, so I have my tag and I have my panel. Right now they're embossed. So I'm going to do the same idea. I'm going to watercolor wash the images. So again, I'm coming back to my ink source. I'm going to pick up some ink. And now this time, I'm not going to watercolor wash the entire panel. I'm just going to watercolor wash over the leaves. Okay, so just really half. I'm just going to go back and forth. And the fun thing about this image is that there's open space in the image, so the color goes between the embossed lines. They call that heat resist embossing. And so then when I come back with my color, it feeds into all that open space and fills it in. But it's not going to change the color of my embossed image. Okay, the water-soluble ink is just going to go right over the top. So now the question is, do I want it a little darker or do I want to keep it light? I think I'm going to keep it light. But even after it dries, you could go back and add a little more. Okay, so I'm just going to try to help that along, stay flat for a moment. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and do the tag as well, because I want that embossed sentiment to really pop. So I've added a little more ink, because I was just about out. Okay, and it's going to be a little bit darker than what I just did, so we may end up going back and adding a little color. But I'm going to try to do this with kind of a dry brush, so I'm going to try to dry off my brush a bit. Okay, so I'm going to come across here and just watercolor wash my tag. You can see as I add the brush strokes, it kind of, you know, looks like a washed out piece of fabric, which I guess really it is, right? They're made up of fibers or papers. Okay, so now I've got my tag and I've got my base. Those really have to dry. I might have to heat those up a little bit, dry them out. Okay, while we're waiting for that to dry for just a few minutes, so in my experimenting with these ideas, I had another panel where I had stamped 6 and watercolor washed it, and then I die cut them with the coordinating die. So I've got some of those pre-cut, and those are nice and dry that I'm going to use as part of the embellishment. And I'm going to set everything up on to a piece of Coastal Cabana cardstock. So that's going to be my base. And I'm going to use this fun white frayed ribbon. So while we're waiting for stuff to dry, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the ribbon. So this is a borrowed idea from a fellow demonstrator, and I really like it. So I am going to unravel the ribbon right down to the end. Now you saw me measure kind of the same length as the card when I started. I gotta hang on to these so they don't fly away while I finish unraveling. Okay, poof! Got a lot of static in here today. Right, poof! There is all my fibers, right? All my fibers. And what I'm going to do is create kind of like a fiber bow. Okay, so here's my fiber bow. If you want to tame it, I'm going to tell you to go ahead and take a piece of this fiber that we unraveled it from, and this time I think I'm just going to wrap it around the center so I have something to snug it to, and then just trim that off. Okay, so I have my unraveled bow ready for my embellishment. So there's that. Alright, let's go back and see if we're ready to put this panel on. So it's a little bit wet still. I'm going to use my heat gun to dry it out a bit. So bear with me a second. I'm going to flip it over and just dry out the paper. Hopefully that'll help just a little bit. Alright, so now my background, right, is going to be this panel that's going to be half painted for our watercolor wash and half still is just the shimmery white cardstock. And it gives you a nice, it's called shimmery for a reason, it gives you a nice little sparkle to it. So I'm just going to come down my side, go back up again, and then I'm going to put that down on my base. See if I can get it straight this time. So unlike the last one where I stepped it up on another piece of cardstock, where the last one I framed with a piece of black, this time I'm not framing it with black. I'm just letting the card base be its border. So this is kind of a softer card. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive right here. I'm going to stick this fiber bow to it. Okay, so that's kind of creating my border between my two sides of my panel, right? But it's very fluid, right? Isn't that cool? All right, now I've got my tag. I am going to add quite a bit of dimensionals to this so that it really stays put, especially since I'm putting it over that fiber bow, which is a little bit bulky. So I want this to have a lot of support. Stay stuck. So I'm just going to pull all these off. And I'm going to put my sentiment right there in the center. So this is kind of a fun way to segment your background, but you still really only have one panel, right? You just stamped and embossed and watercolor washed on half of it, and the other half you left plain. So what do you think? Isn't that amazing? Alright, I know, that was kind of punny. So, there's that. And then if you need to, right, I know a lot of us need to, you can just come in and trim your fibers a little bit, or, you know what, let them run free. Whatever you want to do. I'm going to trim those just a little bit. Okay, so now I have these pre-watercolor washed extra leaves, and I'm just going to use them on dimensionals and add one more little embellishment to my card. So they could get tucked behind. Kind of come up from behind, right? Do I need a third one? I think I'm going to leave that one with two. I like it. Okay, so there we go. So that's my watercolored wash demonstration for you today. Here's the two cards I made. One with the black emboss, one with the white emboss. Right, this one we did the full panel after I embossed, and then made the fun tag with the coordinating dies. And then this one I made with that fussy fiber bow with the white emboss. So I hope you enjoyed both projects today. I hope you do some fun experimenting with watercolor washing and create some fun backgrounds. That's the idea here, create some fun backgrounds. Alright guys, the details will be posted on my blog, the link will be posted in the comments, and as always, if you need to shop, shop with me, I appreciate it, and I will send you some fun thank you stuff in the mail from me. Alright everybody, see you again next time. Happy stamping!